Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Azren here, owner of the Calgary Language Nerds, and welcome to today's YouTube video and, of course, podcast episode. First and foremost, I'd like to acknowledge that I haven't made any YouTube videos or podcasts in quite some time. This is because I have been focused on other priorities in my life. Professionally, work-wise, I've been trying to improve upon the course offerings at my business, the Calgary Language Nerds. We currently offer private classes as well as semi-private classes. We do some group classes, some corporate classes too. What I'm working on is trying to figure out how we can offer classes where you can learn a language in a way that's guaranteed, meaning you reach the desired level of proficiency in a guaranteed fashion. It's a 100% promised, 100% promise. You do this, you will reach this goal. Do so flexibly, because listen, you could offer a guarantee by saying, here's a full-time program. Study for 30 hours a week with us for the next 2 years, and that's a way to guarantee results. But most people don't have that kind of time or the resources financially to do that. So I want to do so. I want to guarantee results in a way that's flexible, affordable, easy, meaning you can do so with a minimal amount of effort. And I'm missing one. There's a fifth one, which I can't remember right now. Flexible, easy, fast. There we go. And quickly. That's the last one. Quickly. So flexible, easy, guaranteed, fast, affordable. I'm trying to put those 5 together into a single course offering that I would like to offer to people. So that's one thing professionally that I've been working on. Personally, I've continued my exploration of the truth. So if you read my blog, my Substack blog, it's Azren, the link is azren.substack.com. That's AZ or Z, REN.substack.com. If you read my blog, you probably already know that I have been focused on telling the truth to myself and to others. In the past, I didn't really focus heavily on being honest with myself about my life, my friendship, so on and so forth. And lately I've been changing that, and a lot of things have changed in my life. I have cleared up a lot of time out of my schedule. I realized that a lot of the things that I was doing at work were rooted in insecurity, in silly insecurity. I realized that I believed a lot of things that I didn't have a logical reason to actually believe. And so when I examined those thoughts, I realized that, oh, I believe XYZ, but XYZ actually might not be true or isn't true. So I'm letting go of lots of beliefs. So there's a lot of different things I've been doing through this exploration of the truth, and I've been blogging about it on my Substack blog. So again, if you're not following that and you're curious to read those blog entries, you can go to azren.substack.com. That's AZ or Z, REN.substack.com. With that aside, let's dive into today's YouTube video topic and podcast topic. And I'd like to give you some reminders today of how to make the language learning process faster, easier, and more enjoyable. Okay, these are all things I've said before, but people need reminders. So reminder number 1, if you're trying to get better at speaking, well, one thing that's really important is getting lots of input. Input means listening and reading. The input you do probably should be, roughly speaking, at your level. Now, people ask me all the time, how do I know something is at my level? How do I know? Well, here's a good general rule of thumb to follow. If you're listening to something or reading something and you're understanding, or rather you're not understanding what they're saying, that is not comprehensible. It is not understandable. Easy enough. You're watching something, listening to something, reading something, and you're like, I don't know what this is about. I don't know what they're saying. Okay, that's definitely too hard. Okay. Too easy would mean that you are watching, reading, or listening to it, and you literally understand everything without any effort. It's easy to understand. So that's too easy. You want something that you understand most of, but you have to pay attention to understand most of it. Okay, so that's a general rough way to look at this comprehensible input. You could look at some exact percentages if you want to. So you could think to yourself, okay, if it's This is hard to give an exact percentage for me, but I'll try my best. It's something like this. It's something like 70% comprehension or higher is an ideal range for comprehensible input. So 70 to 95%, maybe 90, 95%. That's possibly an ideal range. Although I will say that 50 to 70% comprehension, in other words, you watch, read, or listen to something and understand 50 to 70%, there can be a lot of benefit in that 50 to 70% range, particularly if you look up certain unfamiliar words and phrases. You're watching something on YouTube, you pause occasionally to look up some stuff that you're not understanding, for example, right? That's something we can dive into in a much more complicated, more detailed video or podcast later. It's something I've actually done before, but that's a general way to look at this. Long story short, you need to listen to stuff and read stuff that is, roughly speaking, at your level, that you understand the bulk of if you pay attention. Okay, so that's very important. Listening feeds, input feeds output. Listening and reading feeds your speaking and writing. Very important fundamental. Also for your speaking, if you want to get better, it will help if you actually spend time on speaking. Lots of people don't speak very much. They spend most of the time listening, reading, grammar, so on and so forth, but they're not doing any speaking or very little speaking in comparison to the other activities, the other learning activities that they're doing. So speaking is important. How do you speak? Well, depends on the person. I'll give you a few options. You can talk to yourself. You can ask ChatGPT about different topics of what to talk about if you're not very imaginative. Another way you can talk to yourself is you label stuff around you. You just look around you and start to label. Computer, laptop, window, plant, string, laptop charger, telephone, cell phone, so on and so forth. Pen, pencil, whiteout, speaker, folder, what is that thing called? Letter opener, right? That's one quick thing you can do. You can also quickly run through your day, describe to yourself in the target language out loud what you did today. You can even pretend to interview yourself. What did you do today, Azren? Oh, today I went to work. How was work? It was kind of stressful. Oh, what made it stressful? You can pretend to interview yourself and do that in the target language. You can talk about your future upcoming plans. What are you doing this weekend, for example? Hey, what are you doing this weekend, Azren? Oh, this weekend I'm not much going to stay home. Oh, I see. Isn't that boring? It's not too boring. I'm going to watch Netflix. Like, whatever it is, right? These are some different strategies you can use to talk to yourself. Now, it is also important to talk to other people to really get used to that interaction piece of learning a language. You can use an app such as Hello Talk or Tandem. So Hello Talk, hello like hi, talk like talk. Tandem is Tandem. Not everyone loves these apps, but it's 50-50. Some people like it, some people don't. It's worth a try if you haven't tried it, because some people really do love it. If you learn to use it and make friends on those two apps, you can have an infinite number of people to talk to for free that are going to be very helpful for you to improve your speaking and listening ability. If you have a little bit of money to spend, italki.com, italki.com is a wonderful, very affordable place to find people to practice speaking with. So bare bones minimum of how much speaking you should be doing per month. A bare bones minimum I would give you, if you want a rough guideline, a couple hours a month is a great baseline number. More is great, but if you want a bare minimum, that's a good general rule of thumb that you can follow. Of course, there are exceptions. You might be in a season of listening and reading, so you're not doing a lot of speaking, fair enough. But again, it's a general rule of thumb. Now, something else to talk about here. This one I haven't talked a lot about, to be honest. This is a business principle I learned. Well, it's a business and life principle I learned from an individual named Alex Hormozy on YouTube. He was talking about having a minimal number of rules to follow in your life. What he was saying, the gist of his point was something like this, that if you look at very successful people, he's talking about money in business, but it'll work for language too. If you look at money in business, people are very successful. One person will say, you need this wonderful morning routine, and that morning routine is exactly why XYZ person is successful. But then someone else will come and say, well, I have no morning routine, and they're equally successful. So we have two contradicting cases. And what that demonstrates is that certain things work for certain people and certain things work for other people. What works for me might not work for you. What works for so-and-so might not work for some other so-and-so. But there are certain minimal rules that seemingly apply to the vast majority of people, if not everyone. In fact, that was the premise, the idea behind the course, I guess you can say course, the course I made on my website. It's free. It's on azrenthelanguagenerd.com/top-tips. You go there, and that's why I've made those 12 videos and podcasts, to try and distill what are certain core fundamental elements of learning a language that I think we can't escape without. No matter who you are, it seems like these are some core fundamentals we're all left with. That's why I actually made that whole page. So anyway, one thing that might be very helpful, a thinking framework you might find very helpful, is instead of asking yourself what you should do, identify what you shouldn't do. So for example, here you are trying to learn Spanish or French or Mandarin, Japanese, whatever language. You're trying to learn a language, okay? And you're thinking to yourself, well, what app should I use? What should I be reading? How should I be reading? Should I use my italki for speaking practice? Right now, do I need to work on grammar? Should I be doing that? I heard this guy say acquire grammar naturally. This guy say do worksheets. Like, what the heck should I do? What's the right way to approach this? Well, the thing is, it's very likely that there are 17 different right paths that you could take, or 27, or a very large number of paths you can take. So what at least for me lately, what's been very helpful is to identify what you definitely know is a bad idea. So let's do an example together. Let's say you're asking yourself, how do I improve my listening comprehension skills in French? Every time I watch YouTube videos, I don't understand a word of what they're saying. And you're like, I don't know what I should do. Well, let me tell you what you definitely shouldn't do. And you know this is obvious. You definitely shouldn't, and I'd write this down, make a list. You shouldn't ever not listen to things in French. If you're never listening to things in French, well, that's bad. We can all agree, if you want to get better at your listening, never listening to French would be a bad idea. Okay, here's another bad idea. Bad idea, mind you, listen to things in French that you understand nothing of. It's so hard and so fast that you understand nothing of it. You're like, okay, that's a bad idea. So you make a list of all the bad things you know for a fact you shouldn't do. And then whatever's left, that is what you end up doing, right? Once you see what you shouldn't do, you might go, well, I know I shouldn't do those 27 things, those 15 things. Well, okay, that eliminates the field. It looks like there's only 3 or 4 options left. Often that's what's happened for me. When I write down what I shouldn't do, the number of things left that actually would make sense for me to do is actually quite small. And I go, oh, I only had 3 options this whole time? I didn't even realize that. Or sometimes if I still have lots of options, what I'll do is I'll look at the list of things I shouldn't do, and I'll look at the opposite. I'll say, I shouldn't do this. That's obvious. Okay, well, what's the opposite of that? Maybe I should do that then. And then I'll pick something that's the opposite of what I shouldn't do. So that's a framework I learned from this Alex Hormozy that works wonderfully for language learning, as well as, he was talking about in a business sense. So that's something for you to consider that actually, now that I'm saying it, I haven't really talked much about in the past, because it's something I've only recently learned, and especially recently been able to articulate so clearly. Moving on to another reminder for everybody, if you're trying to improve your grammar skills, okay, people are trying to improve the grammar. So there are a couple different approaches to go about doing it. I'll outline a very traditional approach that will work for most grammar points. Okay, the simpler grammar points, this will work. Okay, so first you'll need some kind of exposure to the grammar point. I personally prefer an organic exposure, meaning I hear someone say it, and then I question what was happening grammatically in that sentence. That's my personal preference, but it could literally be through a YouTube video, a teacher, a class, right? You're exposed to a grammar point in some way, shape, or form. Once you're exposed to that grammar point, it will be helpful to learn the rules behind that grammar point. How does it work? It will be helpful to see lots of example sentences that incorporate that grammar point. Little tangent, but a relevant one. less explanations and more, less explanation and more examples. That'll always, any grammar point you're ever struggling with, don't read more explanations if you're confused and you've already read lots of explanations. Instead, look for more examples, example sentences of that grammar point. You can find these, there's a couple of ways you can find examples. You could use, for example, ChatGPT is one of my favorite ones. You tell ChatGPT, hey, ChatGPT, give me 50. I would say 50 to 100 is a really good number to start with. Give me like 50 sentences that incorporate this particular grammar point, written at an A1 level. Enter. You want simple sentences incorporating, so you're not trying to figure out what the words mean, like simple sentences will be better. Examples will always help you. Much more, I would say, usually, than the explanation of the grammar point itself. Okay, so lots of examples are good. So again, let's go back to the beginning. Get exposed to a grammar point, learn the rules, read lots of example sentences. Step 4, do lots of practice exercises. So fill in the blank, multiple choice, conjugation drills. Those are good. Those are 3 good ones to start with, I would say. Lots will help you. Like, people say that the drills don't work, which to an extent is true, but it's not 100% true, I would say. It's only partially true. One thing to think about is, I think some people don't do enough practice drills. If you're going to learn using that kind of approach, I think some people just don't do enough practice drills. Like if you did 10 practice drills for the past tense in French, practice like fill in the blank activities, whatever, and you did 10, and you're like, oh my God, that was hard. It didn't really help me very much. Well, try like 80. It probably will help you. You'll start to see patterns. You know, I saw, it's not related to language, but I think there's probably a connection here. I saw a video of someone talking about a standardized test in university. I forget which one, might have been SATs or LSAT, or I can't remember which one it was, unfortunately. But apparently there's a direct correlation to the test score and the number of practice questions that the person did prior to the test. So if they did something like, I think it was 1,000 to 2,000 practice questions, I forget the number, it was in the thousands. If you did a certain number of practice questions before the test, you are highly likely to get in the X percentile, highest percentile on that exam. Now, for language learning, it's a little different because you're trying to learn the language to speak it. You're not just trying to learn to pass an exam per se. But if you're trying to internalize a grammar point, doing 50, 100, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 plus grammar exercises, like actual exercises, getting them corrected, looking at what the mistakes were, why it was wrong. You can use ChatGPT for that, really. You can tell it, hey, correct this, tell me why it's wrong, give me another explanation. You can do that if you don't have a teacher, right? Which is wonderful now. That will help tremendously for helping grammar points get internalized. Okay, so let's recap where we're at. So get exposed to the grammar point, learn the rules behind it, the explanation, look at lots of example sentences, do lots of practice exercises, right? Those 4 alone for most grammar points will work extremely effectively. It'll work. And even interestingly, you probably won't even have to do like 100 practice exercises. I gave a very big number. You probably won't need that many. You might need like 25, 30, 40, right? And that'll do it for most of them. Now, some of the more complex grammar points, you might need to go a step further. You might need to, I wish I had a more comforting answer here, but it might be a matter of giving your brain 6 to 18 months to absorb that grammar point over time. So you might have to leave that grammar point aside, keep learning the language for another 6, 12, 18 months, pay attention to how native speakers use that grammar point in speech. You make an active effort to try and use it in your speech as often as you can, right? And just pay attention over the next 6 to 18 months, and then your brain will gradually improve. You know, sometimes there are those difficult grammar points that just don't stick well, and it just takes time for your brain to digest it. The good news, though, is for 80, 90%, for most grammar points, those 4 steps I provided earlier, that'll do it. You'll get it. You'll have a good grasp of it. And it'll just be a matter of doing a little bit of practice with it in real life situations before it's like 100% automatic. Okay, let's keep going. I can keep going here. I'm in a good run. So on the note of pronunciation, we've talked about listening, talked about speaking, talked about grammar. Let's talk about pronunciation. So if you want to improve your pronunciation, there are a number of very simple things you can do that will improve your pronunciation. The very first one is just understanding the mechanics of the mouth. What does that mean? This means understand what does your tongue have to do to create the sound that you are trying to learn. So that if you don't know what the tongue needs to do, it'll help you to learn what the tongue needs to do. Put the tip of your tongue here, blow air out of your mouth, like break it down. There are lots of YouTube videos that'll do that for you. That'll help. Second thing that'll help is watching YouTube videos from different people that explain how to pronounce the difficult letter or sound that you're struggling with. Often if you're struggling with it, there's specific sounds that are hard for you. Well, watch for each letter that you're struggling to pronounce, watch 10 to 20 different videos on how to pronounce that letter, because people have different explanations. And the 17th video you watch might be the unlock that helps you pronounce that letter. If you only watch 2 or 3 videos, well, maybe those 2 or 3 people didn't explain it to you in the way that would make it make sense to you, right? Now, for pronunciation, the other thing that also is very important to understand is this. Actually, I haven't said very often. I've not said this often. So most of the stuff I've said today has been reminders of stuff I've said before. This is a new one, relatively new anyway. One of the biggest reasons I find that people feel that their pronunciation is bad or that other people are struggling to understand them is that they don't inject enough confidence in their speech and their body language. They don't inject enough confidence in their speech and their body language. I'll give you a little story to demonstrate this. I teach a group Spanish class right now. There's actually 3 that I teach back to back. And this is a topic we discuss in all 3 classes, funnily enough. So in these classes, most of the students that I teach in all 3 of these classes, most of them, what ends up happening, sorry, my phone went off. What ends up happening in these classes is they look tentative when they're speaking. They look up and away from the person they're talking to. So like I'm doing in the video, they look up and away because they're thinking. They look up and away thinking of the words, and they talk while they're looking up and away. The pitch of the voice goes up. They often have small body language. Their eyes are wide and scared looking. They phrase every statement like a question, as if they're uncertain about if they're saying something right, or maybe if they're wrong, or is there a mistake. They self-correct themselves while they speak. And so they're just emanating a lack of confidence. And what that does when you're with a native speaker is it invites them to question what you're saying too. Meaning you say something and you're not sure, even though you might have said it perfectly clearly, the other person's going to also act insecure because they're just going to mirror what you're doing unconsciously. Like, did I hear that right? Why is he acting that way? Why is he questioning? So speaking with a bit more confidence, right? Lowering the tone of your voice. Look at the person you're talking to. So if you need to think about the words, I've struggled with this a lot in most of my adult life, even especially as a language learner. Oh my God. Only recently I've been really trying to fix this. But when you talk to someone in the target language, regardless of your level, if you have to think of what to say, that's fine. Look away, think. But every time you talk, look at the person you're talking to. Look at them. And understand that, yes, you're going to make mistakes. It's going to happen. Yes, of course. Okay. But keep the speech coming out of your mouth. Once you've done your thinking, you look at them, keep the words flowing out of your mouth. It can be slow. It can be a bit painful, but keep them moving and watch them, look at them. And you'll be surprised at, how do I say this? you'll be surprised by how much better your pronunciation gets just as a byproduct of you speaking with a certain level of confidence, right? Certain level of confidence and confidence. Let's just stick with that word there. Okay. So people think often that improving your pronunciation is about getting super technical about the sounds, which is partially true to make sure you really pronounce the letter R correctly, the letter this correctly, letter that. Yes, that's all true, right? Connecting your sentences and getting hyper analytical, yes, to an extent. But but equally, if not more important, is just making sure that your body language, your vocal language, like the tone of your voice, right? And then your actual speech comes across as at least somewhat confident. And that's not what generally happens with a lot of language learners. Okay, one last tip for pronunciation. It's related to what I was saying on confidence, is rhythm is more important than accuracy. Rhythm is more important than accuracy. What does that mean? The rhythm of your speech is more important than how well you pronounce each letter. I'll demonstrate this in English, okay? So I'm gonna take a bit of a French accent in my English. I'm gonna speak with a little bit of a French accent, okay? And I'm gonna say the same sentence, or I'm gonna talk in two different ways. Way number one is gonna be pronounced a little bit better in terms of the sounds, but the rhythm is gonna be a bit slow and tentative. Okay, ready? Here we go. Hello, my name is Azren, and I am from France. And I like to learn different languages because traveling is very fun. Okay, I'm trying to limit the accent and do a somewhat accent in French. Okay, so that's that. And so notice very pausey, right? If you talk like that, there's something about the way people receive that. They hear that differently. They receive it differently than if you, for example, speak something like this. Hello, everyone. My name is Azren. I'm from France, and I've been in Canada now for the past 15 years. And I love being here. I love learning languages, and I have so many friends in the city. And it's a wonderful place to live. And I'm excited to meet everyone in this meeting today. So again, that's a bit of a thicker accent, but it comes across different. And whenever I talk to native speakers of English, particularly English, but other languages too, who know people that come from a different country that speak English or whatever the language in question is, and they just speak more confidently, even though they might have a thicker accent, the confidence and the rhythm and then sounding natural, but not over stressing every single sound seems to lead to better results for one reason or another. Okay. So I think that's a good place to end today's podcast and YouTube video. I could go a little further, but this feels like a nice natural place to start. Thank you to stop rather. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I appreciate your attention as always. If you have any thoughts, comments, questions on this, you're more than welcome to contact me. Visit azrenthelanguagenerd.com/contact, and you'll find all of my social media platforms. You can email me from there. However you want to contact me, you will find it on that page. Again, that's azrenthelanguagenerd.com, AZREN, thelanguagenerd.com/contact. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.